Now, Donald Trump has been elected the 47th president of the United States. He'll take office on January 20th, and under his leadership, we may see some changes, including to our education department. Here to give us a look at what we can expect, I'm joined by attorney, community leader, and former City Houston Council member Amanda Edwards. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Appreciate having you in studio. So on several occasions, let's start with how President-elect Trump said that he would eliminate the Department of Education. How can that be? What would that do? How would that impact our local school districts?
Absolutely. It's something that could definitely have an adverse impact on our local schools and our students. And in particular, funds made available for students with disabilities, also low-income families, could be at risk by eliminating the Department of Education, in addition to things like Pell Grants, also administered by the Department of Education.
What would the point of eliminating that department be?
You know, there has been so much discussion about wanting to shrink the size of federal government, but doing so at the detriment of students is not the best idea. And that's what's on the table right now. Hopefully that does not come to fruition, but certainly has been discussed by the president-elect on the campaign trail and certainly within the realm of Project 2025, which is also something that has been guiding policy of this next administration.
Can we assume then that student loan forgiveness would be on the chopping block? Is that going to impact families?
That's certainly something that Project 2025 highlights specifically as being on the chopping block because, you know, it's something that, you know, they hold dear to in terms of wanting to make sure that people are paying their debts, even though the courts have ruled and been supportive of the Biden administration's, reversal of that. We wanted to see people be able to afford to be educated in this country and not be saddled with the type of debt where they have a whole mortgage payment to make and they haven't even bought a home yet.
How would Head Start programs be impacted?
That's also something that Project 2025 highlights as something that should also be on the chopping block. And of course, as you know, providing access to early education is essential to reducing the school to prison pipeline, but also just to make sure that we have an adequately prepared workforce for all Americans. By eliminating something like Head Start, we're really putting our students, particularly those in lower income environments, in a disadvantage. And what we want education.
They're already disadvantaged in Texas too by not having a lot of early start programs.
Exactly.
Early education programs.
Exactly. So Texas is lagging behind with respect to early childhood education, and doing something like this would be
I mean, it's almost non-existent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Would a reduction of federal government and civil services protection impact things like infrastructure and access to health care?
Yeah, so a huge premise of Project 2025 and that agenda is to do things that would reduce the size of federal government and also streamline who gets to be in it. And with civil service protections that would allow mass layoffs and firings of those that would otherwise not be fired or laid off. And so as a result of that, you're going to be seeing and witnessing inefficiencies within the delivery of services, things like infrastructure repair, things like what happens from a delivery of healthcare perspective in terms of reimbursements. There are just a litany of things that government does behind the scenes to make sure that the experience that you have as the end user is the best that it can be.
Do you believe this is going to happen, or this is just what you suspect will happen if federal government is reduced?
Well, I suspect it could and likely would happen because of how much attention has been paid to the inefficiency of government in terms of the rhetoric that President-elect Trump has put forward. He's talking about instituting new offices, new people to focus on that inefficiency and changes of that nature. So I suspect there will be some of that. Now, will it be as widespread as is being discussed right now? I can't say that, but I will say that that is something that I do believe to be a priority of this administration.
So what do you think is at stakes for Democrats?
Right now, I know a lot of people are feeling discouraged. They don't know what next steps they should engage in. There was a lot of momentum and energy that was put forward that has now left them feeling very disappointed. I think the key message to deliver to anybody who's been engaged, who wants to see change in their community, is to stay stay engaged. This is not a short-term exercise. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You've got to be involved. You've got to be part of the solution. And so part of that is elevating your voice, making sure that you defend your rights and freedoms in the ways that you feel best and that represent the country you would like to live in, but also that you continue to participate in the democratic process, meaning you want to make sure you don't just turn out to vote during a presidential cycle. You got to go at every election. You've got to try to make sure your voice is heard through your vote.
Okay, really quickly then on that note, after a very divisive race, how do we go into the future unified?
Absolutely, we've got to remain engaged. I think if we go home and everybody separates and stops talking, I think that is the worst thing that could happen. We've got to all remain engaged. Sometimes you're going to have the ability to have the agenda setting authority, and sometimes you're not. And so we've got to elevate the voices that need us to represent them, and we've got to advocate as best we can for children and families in this country that need our voices to fight for them. And so staying engaged and representing all Americans, I think, is going to need to be front and center for all of us, and hearing from others about what went wrong, what they felt disconnected with in terms of democratic politics and the like, and then figuring out how to move on from here, move forward from here.
Don't further divide.
Exactly.
Very well said. Amanda Edwards, thank you so much, and thanks again for coming into the studio. You can read more on the election by going to click2houston.com and searching for Decision 2024.